I'm Frank Almond. I'm the mayor of Tucker. Please forgive my voice. I've had a cold a couple of days ago and just haven't gotten back to a full voice yet, so I hope you'll bear with me. There's about 6 things I'm going to say first, so I'll just have to start. And to begin with, I want to let you know that I think all but one member of our council is here in the room listening tonight. Kara Schroeder on the front row here. Amy, go ahead, let me see who you are. Amy Trophy. Julia Reese is here. I saw Ben Wynn come in. He's standing in the back waving at you. And Alexis Weaver back in this direction. So they're on hand to hear what you have to say and maybe talk with you afterwards, answer some questions if that's something you'd like to stick around for. I'm going to introduce a couple of our staff folks who are here too, beginning with John McHenry, our city manager. Over here is Rick Robertson, our Parks and Rec director. Thank you. Other staff around the room you can meet perhaps afterwards again. We'll explain some of that as we get a little closer to it. So the order of things tonight is I'm going to give you a little background on the project, maybe try to answer some of the questions that I know you have to save some time later on. Michael Kidd is here with us from Root Design. He's firm did the design work, and he's going to make a presentation about the plan, the project plan itself. Maybe answer some questions afterwards, but want to be sure you understand what the project is and what it isn't and what's gone into the design of it and so forth. When we get through that, we're going to give you a time to comment, and we're going to do that much in the same way we do at a city council meeting. I'll explain that when we get there, but you'll just be able to come to this microphone over here, and I'll have a couple minutes to say whatever you think everybody needs to hear or that we need to hear, but I'll explain that when we get to it. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background, as I say, from emails and other contact that I've had on some questions that I know you have. Let me begin with a little bit of a review of the history of the project, and especially how we would normally proceed on such a project, because in a couple of significant ways, we're off the rails on this one, not on a normal course, and I want to get everybody on the same page as to where we are and where we aren't, and maybe what's next. First of all, there are several purposes for the project, and I'll give you some more detail later, but I'm sorry, I keep looking over here because there's a picture of it back there. Excuse me. Pickleball is pickleball, and we'll talk about that. There are some other important parts of this project. The parking is needed for the rec center itself for other programs in the rec center. It's been identified as a need for a while. The access to the rec center, as it's gotten busier and busier, and we're using the whole rec center more than we once did. It's important for people to be able to get in and out from different places easily. But that means also that there are fire safety considerations, and so there's one now. There's a circle. If you've never been back toward that field, there's a circle there now left over from the days when it was a school. But as we're busier and as we have people in those parts of the building, it's important to be able to have emergency vehicles access that side of the building. So all of those are part of the project as it stands, as it's been proposed. So ordinarily, what would happen is we would a thought like this, a concept like this would come from one of our plans, in this case the parks master plan. It would get vetted and worked on, and really the first official step is we would hire somebody to do the design. So we have an idea of what we want. In this case, we hired Michael Kidd's firm, Root Design. We would, bear with me just a second. Once that design's done, and there's some process in there for refining the design, changing the design, and so on. But the end of that process is we have construction documents that somebody could actually build the project from, and we send those out for a bid. It's a very public, very prescribed sort of process. We get the bids back. Sometimes we're surprised by what the bids are relative to what we thought they were going to be. Good surprises and bad surprises. But we get a bid back, a low bid, and that bid is presented or recommended in some way to us on council by our staff. And there are lots of things we can do with that bid. By that time, we're committed. We generally think we want to do the project, but that bid might change a lot about it. And it's at that point where we make some final decisions about whether or how to proceed, whether the price is acceptable, and so on. if it were approved, then it would go to construction and so on. So in this process, we had one other, we inserted one step in the process, which was a public meeting, a public input kind of a session to be held somewhere during the design phase so that council, but the public as well, could comment on, what do you think of it? You know, partway finished, what are your thoughts about it? We committed to doing that, and then at our own fault, we failed to follow through. We kind of got ahead of ourselves, packet went out for bid. We had not held that kind of a public meeting, although there was some other input that you'll hear about as we go along. There was what we're calling a design input session, which was basically some pickleball players that they called in to say, how does this work as a pickleball complex or facility? Not should it be there or should it be somewhere else, but just given the way it's designed, how would it work for pickleball players? And so that was for a very particular purpose and was not intended to replace a public meeting or a council update. But the bidding process went forward, and the second thing that happened that's kind of gotten us off the rails is the bids came back about a month ago, and the low bid, the low acceptable bid, was $735,000 more than our pre-bid estimate budget. So again, ordinarily, that would be kind of a, we'll hold everything for the council and considering something like that. Since we had also come to the understanding we had made a promise that we hadn't fulfilled about the public meeting, what we did was we just kind of said, stop everything. We're going to go back and rectify that. We're going to have that public meeting. We're going to hear from whoever we need to hear from about the project and the details of it. And then we'll get back onto track. Now, when we do that, we're not bound to do anything with the bid that we have. We could accept it, we could move forward. We could throw it out and do nothing at all, or we could do something in between, modify it, rein it in a little bit, talk about things we could do to save costs, whatever we want to do, all those options are open to us. So important for you to know, because I've seen otherwise, we haven't awarded a contract, there's not a contractor, none of that has happened. As a matter of fact, the council hasn't even discussed the bid, except informally. We stopped short of that part of the process, and that's what we're here, that's where we are as we gather tonight, and you guys are gonna hear some of those details and then have a chance to comment about it. So let me answer some of the inquiries and questions I received and try to clear some of those up. I mentioned there's no contract now, there's no contractor, there's no timeline, there's nothing happening until we decide to make something happen. And that's why we're here tonight, is to hear about it. So if that was on your mind, or you had concerns about how the contracting process ran, or who the contractor is, it doesn't exist. And if you'd like to know about our contracting process, we can talk through that, but it's very rigid and very prescribed as to how we go about notifying all qualified bidders and getting those in and evaluating them and then choosing one. So that's kind of the end of the process. Back to the beginning, the genesis of the project comes from, as I mentioned, our original Parks Master Plan, which was completed in 2019. We update those plans. There are lots of plans like transportation and others in the city. We update them after 5 years. And so we just finished a Parks Master Plan update earlier this year. You can read those for yourselves. They're on our website. In 2019, pickleball got kind of a mention. It was becoming a thing, but nowhere near what it's become since then. But we were aware it was a very fast-growing sport, and by the time we began updating the plan in 23 and then finished it earlier this year, demand for pickleball facilities had exploded, and I know that many of you know that, all over the country, and maybe especially in our area. But there was competition, of course, for court space, because not a lot of pickleball courts around. We were converting tennis courts for the purpose, and so you got competition between tennis players and pickleball players, and much more demand for the tennis courts than there had been before. So we were seeing a demand for a lot more space. In 2019, actually, I'm looking at Rip, is that right? In 2019, we drew the lines for the first time on the courts in the gym and allowed pickleball, and they were full almost instantly. During COVID, we also did the same with the tennis courts at what had become Rosenfeld Park by then, as a former community pool and tennis club. that they gave to the city. I don't remember the timing on that, but they basically gave us that property with a promise that we would use it for the city and that we would renovate it and maintain it and bring it back up to speed. And so at the time, those courts were almost unusable for tennis. They were cracking, and there was a big stormwater problem over there. So we lined them for pickleball, and those also became at capacity almost right away. The whole property needed stormwater work. As I say, that's what was destroying the tennis courts. Come down a hill there, and it was washing them out. So we had on-street parking over there that was becoming problematic. So at that time, we talked to the neighborhood, and actually it was here along with another project we were seeking public input on. I don't remember what it was, but we had a meeting in this room and asked people regarding Rosenfeld, as we're renovating it, do you want to get tennis back? Is there that much demand for tennis over there? You want some pickleball, all pickleball? You want on-street or off-street parking, which would have something to do with how many courts you could have. Basically, the overwhelming response was they wanted the tennis courts restored more or less as they had been. There's still big demand for tennis over there. So we were back to competition for court space. But the Parks Department began to work on a solution for pickleball because this demand was clear. Meanwhile, at the rec center, which by the way was the busiest rec center in DeKalb County before we became a city, it was the busiest of their rec centers. Rip and his team have ramped up the programming and the activities and things here several fold. The rec center's getting busier and busier, and so these issues about parking and access and fire safety were coming up. When pickleball came up, the idea was hatched to build a plan like this that might address all those things in one project. So as Parks and Rec considered all those things, we had this concept that they brought us in October of 2022, so just about 2 years ago now. It was the first time they came to us and said, hey, here's an idea. We're working on a plan for Rosenfeld. Here's a way we can solve several problems at once by deploying the rec center. And so that was October of 22. We agreed to proceed, and in March of 23 was when we hired Root Design to do that design. And that was when we confirmed and internally to ourselves, I think publicly as well, that we would have some kind of a meeting. The council said, hey, when will we get an update? And the answer was just generally, somewhere during the process, we'll get to a point, we'll bring you our idea, and you can have some comment, and you can have some public comment as well. That's when we agreed to do that. That meeting is tonight. So here we are back where we're seeking your input on the project, not yet even having considered the bids we received. In addition to hearing from you, you'll hopefully get lots of detail from us, not only tonight, but over the coming weeks. As I say, there's not a deadline out there. We're not forced into action on one thing or another. We're just taking a step back, catch up with where we should have been, and then we'll proceed in a more normal course. So there's no specific plans. All the options are on the table. I mentioned we could do anything from nothing to proceed with exactly what we have already. Both of those are probably unlikely. I think probably something in the middle, as I mentioned, is more where we'll wind up. So here are a few things you can expect to hear about tonight and in the coming days and weeks. In no particular order from emails I've received. There's no legal requirement to hold a meeting like this on a project like this. We do so because it's voluntary, and we do so because it's wise and it's practical. But there's not a legal requirement. So if you're concerned that the city somehow mistakenly or otherwise avoided its legal responsibility, not the case. We're just trying to do the right thing. We've paused the project to go back and rectify our own error. Top concerns I've heard about the project particulars include lights. Michael's going to discuss this in more detail, but they're designed under something called the Dark Skies Protocol, which we are using at Fitzgerald Field. You can see it in lots of places around town. It leverages LED technology to light the space you want lit, and not much more beyond a few feet from that space. So Michael is going to show you a little bit about that when we get there. Parking and traffic. It's important to understand, as we sit now, well over half the parking for this facility is most easily accessed from Morgan Road. Under the design that's here, the vast majority would be more easily accessed from La Vista Road, and that's intentional. We're trying to get the traffic. We're trying to get the front of this building as you can see, on a busy road. And so we're trying to encourage people to use that parking as opposed to the back. If we do nothing, or if we don't do nothing about parking, it stays as it is, and I think Morgan Road would see a difference in traffic under the current proposal. And without advocating for it, I'm just saying I think that's the case. There are other options to reduce traffic on Morgan, including closing the access. You know, our driveway that goes out onto Morgan invites people in. It invites people to drive down Morgan to get here. We haven't considered it, but it's something that we can look into. We've not yet studied that option, but we will as we go forward. Noise, of course, any rec center and an activity field like the one that's attached to it is going to produce noise, and the more we use it, the more noise there'll be. But we recognize that pickleball has some unique noise and sound characteristics. And so we're, even just in the 2 years since we began this planning, there's been much more pickleball deployed out there. There've been a whole range of kinds of facilities built. There's been some experience developed about the noise and how to handle it, how to mitigate it, how bad it is, all of those things. And so Michael's going to talk about noise mitigation that is already built into the plan, as well as some things that we could consider in addition to those things. Been a lot of talk about, you know, a 500-foot standard. I'm told there's no such standard. The Pickleball Association doesn't have a specific regulation. The Parks and Rec professional organizations don't have a specific recommendation. There's a general recognition that pickleball makes a lot of noise, and it can be a particularly annoying kind of noise. The industry is working on quieter paddles, quieter balls. There's things you can do around operating hours. All those things can be considered, but we're just working on them now. And so we want to hear from you what you think, and especially if you have any ideas in that regard. But just want to let you know that that's part of the consideration. A couple of other general thoughts, and then we'll turn over to Michael. Please understand, we as a city, we're building a park system. Okay, we don't look at every individual park or try to have every individual park contain every kind of element that we might have. We're trying to build a system for the city that includes, the goal is, that includes different kinds of activities for different kinds of people, ages from children to youth, young adults and adults, and seniors. We're trying to cover all of that. We're trying to provide passive activities and active activities. We're trying to provide geographically across the city places you can get to with relative ease. We're trying to plan places where your dog can be there, on leash or off leash, dog parks only. So we're not evaluating just pickleball and saying, oh, should we spend $2 million or $3 million? How many people are going to play pickleball? Let's divide that out by the number of people and say, is it worthwhile? We're trying to create a system that contains a huge variety of elements so that everybody in all these different categories and stages of life can participate in our parks. It's an important thing, and it's not always intuitive that that's what we're doing, but that's what we're doing. I think I may stop there. Hold on, let me check my notes. I'll say one word about location, because there's been lots of questions about this location, why it's the best. I've described why it's at least an excellent location, although it has its downsides. But there have been lots of questions about other locations. Why don't you build it at North Lake Mall? Why don't you build it at North Lake Tower Festival? Well, obviously we don't own those things, and they would be very expensive to own. We could try to go buy them. If they were available, maybe we could afford it, maybe we could buy them, maybe we put pickleball there. Probably not. But there are reasons, well, I'll just leave it at that. The other problem with choosing a different location is it doesn't solve the other issues that I've described. It doesn't get parking here. It doesn't get access or fire safety or the other things. So we can talk. You can make suggestions. We can tell you what we looked into with some specifics at other locations. But I guess I want to say, we didn't just say, oh, we got some space, let's stick it over there. There's reasoning, there's rationale, and it's been given a lot of thought, and you'll hear some more about that as we go along. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to turn it over to Michael Kidd. When he's finished, I'm going to come back and explain what we'll do about the kind of the public input segment of the event, and we'll carry on from there. Michael Kidd, thank you for your work.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can everybody hear me? Everybody okay in the back? I appreciate everybody being here, and I also want to take responsibility for not having this meeting sooner as the consultant. I agreed to do that, and it didn't happen, and for that I apologize. It was nothing intentional. It was simply, once we got into the weeds of actually designing this project, I just missed it. I had my senior project manager in my office handling the day-to-day of the project, and I didn't communicate that to her, and we didn't get it on the schedule. And I apologize for that. So we are here tonight to go through the full design process and let you know everything that went into the decisions that were made on the design side, and get your input and make adjustments as we need to. So that's what we're going to do tonight. Do we have somebody running the actual slides? Okay. Let's try this.
Are we blocking y'all's view?
Bear with me just a minute. Okay, here we go. Okay, and if you can't see this, I think you'll have an opportunity to view the presentation. But I'm going to go through each of these slides, and we'll do the comment period at the end, like the mayor said. So for our involvement as the consultant to design the project, that started in March of last year, when we were asked by the city to provide a proposal to design a pickleball complex at the Tucker Rec Center. That was our charge, to design that facility. The program that we were given was approximately 16 pickleball courts, 50 to 60 parking spaces, sand volleyball and bocce ball if space allowed for those, as well as utility stub-ups for a future restroom pavilion for the facility. So that was the program that we were handed and asked to design that and see if we could make that work in this location. Our design and engineering scope included the steps that the mayor mentioned: the concept design, construction documents, permitting, bidding, and construction administration if the project moved through the full stage of the process. This was the initial program diagram that we started with, again, that was provided to us, which showed the pickleball courts, as well as a pavilion in the middle. You've got the sand volleyball and bocce ball court shown on the right-hand side, parking to the south. This is what we would call a program diagram, not a site plan, meaning that this has the various elements of the project that were intended to be designed, but at this point, there hadn't been much of any consideration in how those different elements would fit on this particular site. And you'll see that as we go through the design development. But that was the program that we started with. Okay. So this is the site. So we've got the rec center over here to the left. This green area is the property that we're talking about. That's La Vista Road to the south, Chamblee Tucker to the right with the high school over here, and then Morgan Road to the north. Commercial properties along the south and east, and residential properties to the north with the rec center over to the west. A quick summary of the schedule of project activities. This was what I was alluding to when I talked about getting into the weeds of the project. So we started in March. That was when we signed the contract. We immediately started looking at multiple different concepts for the project. That happened in the first couple weeks. We met with the DeKalb fire marshal because we knew that fire access was going to be a major consideration. Fire accommodations can typically have a big impact on the actual physical design of a property like this. So we wanted to know what those requirements were as soon as humanly possible. In April, we met with RIP and the Parks Department to go over the concept. Immediately followed by the design input meeting where we met with several folks from the Tucker Pickleball community to talk about those detailed design elements of how to make this facility function well for the people that were going to use it for pickleball. In May, we continued to develop that site plan. We received the topographic survey of the property in May. That was commissioned right at the start of the contract, and it took a couple months. That's typical for getting a topographic survey. We needed that to work out the grading and the drainage for the project, so that was a critical component. Once we got that, that was the very next thing that we did, was to work on the grading and drainage, because we knew that along with stormwater was going to be another major component for making sure that the facility could function in this location. So we started working on the hydrology study for the stormwater. In June, we sent a revised, updated plan to DeKalb Fire Marshal for their second round of input. We continued to develop the site plan. Started working on the demolition plan, grading and drainage, utilities, erosion control, construction details. We had to send updated plans to our engineer that was working on the hydrology study. The hydrology study is a very complicated, boring process that nobody really wants to know anything about other than engineers that do that work, and we're glad that there are those people out there that enjoy doing that. August, we started coordination on the lighting and the actual pavilion, the restroom and pavilion. So we issued our preliminary plans to Musco, who is the vendor that was going to handle the sports lighting for the courts. And Romtech was a vendor that was going to handle the pavilion and restroom. So we started coordinating with them. In September, we sent a rendered site plan to the city that was posted to the website. We continued our coordination on the pavilion design, revised our grading plans again. We went through probably 6 or 7 different revisions to the grading and drainage plan to make sure that everything would work properly on this site. It seems counterintuitive. It's a flat site, so you'd think it would be very easy to get it to drain. But actually, flat sites are much more difficult to handle drainage on because you have to push the water to get it to the drain locations. So we went through a lot of revisions on the grading and drainage. Began coordination with our electrical engineer that we had as a subconsultant. So they were coordinating with Musco, but our electrical engineer was also providing electrical plans for the parking lot lights and for electrical receptacles for the courts and for the pavilion itself. About that time was when we had what we would consider a 60% set of plans that we sent to the city. At that point, I was in near constant communication with Rip about the project, so there wasn't a whole lot that he hadn't seen at that point when we sent those plans, but that was part of the deliverables of the contract. In October, that's when we received the final hydrology study for stormwater. That is also when we confirmed that we were going to need a GDOT permit for the driveway. And we ended up having to reroute that because the pipes weren't big enough. We had to upsize the pipes. So we rerouted that underneath the driveway and out to the storm drainage pipes that are on the in the right-of-way at La Vista Road. This is just a quick little sketch showing that was the existing storm pipe that was there. These 3 green dots are those 3 giant white oaks that are out in front of this, the rec center. And that was another thing that we didn't want to even remotely come close to causing any disturbance to those trees. So we proposed to simply cap that pipe underground and reroute the new pipe down the driveway to avoid the root zone of those trees. So that existing pipe would just remain underground. It would be capped and abandoned. For the restroom pavilion, we ended up looking at all the different factors that go into that, the size, the orientation, layout, architectural style. I mentioned that we coordinated with a vendor called Romtech. They're a national company that provides efficient delivery of these types of pavilions and restrooms. These public restroom facilities can be extremely expensive. So the more that those can be streamlined and made efficient, the better it is for the city, for the project. So we like working with that vendor. They do a really good job. It's not a completely prefab structure, so you do get to have some customization, but they have the efficiencies built in similar to a prefab facility. This is the elevation of that looking from the side of the building. This is a similar pavilion structure with a restroom. Ours is configured a little bit differently, but this is the closest photograph that they had of what that pavilion would look like. Lighting and electrical, we talked a little bit about that initially. So the lighting that was required for the project, we had to provide lighting for the parking spaces if this facility was going to be open after dark, and obviously we need lighting for the courts. Those are the only areas that we need lighting for the facility. So we worked with our electrical engineer, we worked with Musco, again, to try to get the most efficient distribution of light with the least amount of light bleeding out from the site itself. So these 4 lights here are along the edge of the parking lot. Those are intentionally located on the interior of the parking lot, not along the buffer. They still provide the light that we need in the parking lot itself, but they minimize any light bleed beyond the parking area. The orange dots are the larger sports lights for the courts themselves. So we're going to look at that. So this is the product sheet for the parking lot lights, and this is based on the city standard. This is a full cutoff fixture that follows the dark sky guidelines. So the full cutoff fixture is intended to only shine light immediately down on the area that you need the light, rather than having the light source below that shade. The light source is up inside of the shade, and with the LED lights, you have much more control over where that light falls from the light fixture itself. There's been huge advancements in the distribution of light from these types of fixtures. Same is true for the sports lighting. So most people probably have a very firm picture in their head of what sports lighting looks like. I know I do. When I hear the word sports lighting, I think of the big lights at a football stadium that blast light from here to the moon. This facility does not require those types of lights. So the type of sports lighting that we're looking at here is essentially like a beefed up light that you would have in a parking lot. So it's a little bit taller, you've got a few more fixtures on the pole, and it provides a much brighter light on the court surface, but it doesn't light the entire neighborhood. So that, again, that's a full cutoff fixture, and that's an LED fixture. And what that allows us to do, this is the photometric study from those sports lights. This is our site plan in the middle here with the courts down on the bottom. And this red ring around the project, that's a bunch of zeros on this plan. This is what I call a photometric study. And those zeros indicate where the light diminishes to nothing from the source. So immediately on the courts, the light is extremely bright. But as you go not very far from the courts, it diminishes to zero. So you can see how that overlays with the site plan and with the property lines and with the buffers. The one thing that the photometric study does not take into account, and I want to make sure that everybody understands this, is photometric study does not account for topography or existing vegetation. So I mentioned that western half of the buffer is fully vegetated. It also has a slope that goes up from the surface of the field up to those homes in that area. So both of those conditions will minimize any light that escapes the property. But essentially, this is a rendering that the lighting company did to show the distribution of the light around those courts from those sports lights. So you can see the courts themselves are very bright, but as you go out not very far from those courts, the light falls off to almost nothing. All right, on the landscape side of things, a couple things to mention here. So in general, there's landscape requirements that the city has for any type of development like this. And that's a big part of what we do in our office, is preparing those landscape permit drawings. This plan sheet that you're looking at right here is a full-size sheet of calculations that we had to do to make sure that the landscape that we're proposing meets all of the city's requirements. Again, we have copies of those if anybody wants to look those over. But we currently, with the plan that we have, we either meet or exceed all of the city's landscape requirements for the project. In addition to that, we've been talking a lot about this residential buffer to the north, and I want to talk a little bit more about that in terms of the landscape design. So this is the existing condition of that buffer looking in plan view. The courts would be to the south, the residential homes would be to the north. The western half, as I mentioned, has existing vegetation. The eastern half does not. Again, picture that same area. This is the existing vegetation to the west, and this is the area that's open to the east. This is a quick color rendering of the proposed landscape plan that we have for that buffer that shows the proposed plantings in dark green overlaid with the existing vegetation that's there now. So the intent of the landscape plan is to provide a fully landscaped, 50-foot wide transitional buffer between the property and the residential lots to the north. I've got some images and information in the presentation about the specific plant material that we selected for the buffer. These are mostly native trees and shrubs, mostly evergreen trees and shrubs. We designed that buffer so that the plant material is layered in that we have low-growing shrubs, we have larger shrubs, we have understory trees, mid-story trees, canopy trees. So it's a full layering of plant material through that buffer to provide maximum coverage of the plant material in that buffer. And I won't go through these in any detail. You'll be able to see them if you get a copy of the presentation. It's things like that's the eastern red cedar. This is an anise tree. It's another native. Cherry laurel is another native. Red maple, nuttall oak. And this little slide series that we're going to look at next shows the progression of that landscape as we would install this in that buffer area. So this is the existing buffer that's there now. This next slide shows the intended earthen berm from our grading plan in the eastern half of that buffer. So the intent there is, knowing that we're going to have to excavate a bunch of soil to build the courts and the underground detention, rather than hauling off all that dirt, we're going to use as much of it as we can to build up an earthen berm in that half of the buffer to try, again, to provide as much mitigation in this buffer as possible. So that is about a 4-foot earthen buffer as currently designed. This would be the row of shrubs on the pickleball side of the berm. This would be the row of evergreens on the back side of the buffer along the residential properties. So these are cryptomeria. If anybody's familiar with that, that's a fast-growing, very dense evergreen tree. They get about 20 to 30 feet in diameter at their base as they fill in. These are eastern red cedars on the side. Again, those are evergreen. They're a little bit slower growing, but they're native, and they're very resilient. They're very drought tolerant. This is the area of cherry laurels that we have as an understory tree. That's another native tree. Again, it's fast growing and evergreen. On top of that, we have the red maples on the plan, and then finally in front of that, along the edge of the parking lot, we have the nuttall oaks. So this diagram is intended to show what that buffer would look like in about 3 to 4 years. So as these oak trees grow, these trees will end up getting 60 to 70 feet tall. The red maples will get 30 to 40 feet tall. At installation, the oak trees, I think we had a 3-inch caliper spec oak tree, and at installation, a 3-inch oak is about 16 to 18 feet tall. So if we do this right and give these trees what they need, these are all fairly fast-growing trees, and that buffer will fill in pretty quickly. That was the intent of that landscape plan. In addition to that, where the courts are, we looked a lot at this space in between the courts and what we were going to do with that space. And in addition to providing benches for people to sit and wait while they're waiting on a court to play pickleball, we have a lot of landscaping in here, shrubs and trees as well, that's also going to soften that space. So in terms of the noise mitigation measures that we took from the design and engineering standpoint, typically the tools that we have in general for noise mitigation are landscape, plant material, earthen berms, walls, and fences. Those are the 4 typical best practice measures for buffers when you're talking about visual screening and screening for noise and light pollution. So we do not currently have any walls shown on the plan. Walls are really expensive, and as the mayor alluded to, we were also trying to be conscious of the budget as much as we could. This project required a lot of additional work that wasn't anticipated originally. So we were trying to be conscious of that while still providing as many different measures as we could to mitigate that noise. So we have the additional landscaping, the earth and berm. I mentioned that we intentionally had that parking located along the northern property line to keep the courts as far to the south as possible. And to speak a little bit more to that issue, and then we're about done with this part of the presentation. So we looked at the distances from the proposed courts to the homes on Morgan Road, and the furthest distance that we have is about 290 feet. Now that's from the court to the backside of the house. That's not to the backside of the residential lot. So, you know, it is a lot closer to the backside of the property. It's 290 feet to the backside of the house. On the western side, where we have those three courts that sit to the north of the other courts, that distance is about 260 feet to the nearest house. And that is where that existing buffer is located. And then this is a quick comparison, because we knew that this question had come up. There's been a lot of attention on the issue in Avondale Estates. So we looked at that as well. We wanted to understand, you know, what we were dealing with in Tucker specifically when we have a serious issue right next door in Avondale Estates. So the courts there at the Swim and Tennis Center, these are the two tennis courts that have been striped for the 4 pickleball courts. And from this court here on the right to the nearest primary house is 116 feet, plus or minus. On this lot right here, which we can see in the next slide, there's also an accessory dwelling unit behind that home that's like a rental unit behind that house. And it is right at the property. It's only 12 feet from their property line. So it's probably about 25 feet from that court. And then to the left-hand side, the nearest home to that court is about 106 feet. And again, we were measuring to the back side of these homes, not to the edge of the property. So we just wanted to make sure we understood first what we're talking about and what we're dealing with the homes in Tucker. So the homes here are, based on the measurements from Google Earth, are nearly 3 times as far from the pickleball courts as the ones in Avondale Estates. Now that's not to say that some of the homes that are further away don't have issues as well. It's just to say that we were looking at the closest homes to the courts to try and get a relative comparison of that. That is simply to provide all of us information. It's not to try and say that this isn't an issue. We sorry about that. All right. So I hope that by going through all of that detail in the thought process behind the design decisions that were made, that everybody understands that we did take this very seriously, and we tried to do everything possible to design a pickleball complex at this location in the most responsible way that we could. And then this is a summary of the bidding phase that the mayor talked about with a sheet of the invitation to bid that was used. This is all followed the city's standard bidding processes. So with that, I apologize for being long-winded, but I wanted to make sure we got as much information to you as possible. So I'm done with that part of the presentation.
So we're gonna put up the images of the project again so you guys can see them from where we are. So what we're gonna do is have our, what we call council meetings, a public comment process. We're gonna do it pretty much the way that we do there, although we're in a bit of a different environment. Here's how it works. Anybody who wants to speak can speak. Just come right up to this podium here. Yep, come around the far side. Yep. You can line up, you can wait your turn. 2 minutes, strictly enforced. We don't have many rules. We have a couple of rules and a couple of very earnest requests. So 2 minutes, we'll signal you, we'll try to let you finish your thought if you're in the middle of a sentence, but otherwise please respect the time. Please don't, to the extent you can restrain yourself, don't repeat something somebody else has said. You can say ditto, same as the other guy, something, I agree with that, to save time for the other folks. We're gonna allow up to 40 minutes, which is twice what we do at city council meetings, for you to get in line and say your piece, and we may not exhaust 40 minutes. We'll just see how it goes. We'd ask you to remember, this is for a particular purpose, and this is an important thing for you to know. Your council members and I exist to hear from you. You don't have to wait for a public meeting. You don't have to hear a conspiracy theory or a vague accusation on Facebook and come out here and shake your fist. You can contact me or your representatives anytime. Our phone numbers, our emails are out there. We're more than willing to hear from you.
Vice versa.
The point of this meeting is if there's things that you need to say or want to say in public, or to all of us together, or in a way that you know who heard it, that's what we're here for. And there are things that sort of fall into that category. So you won't be interrupted. We won't stop and answer your questions midstream. It's not a Q&A. You get 2 minutes. Say your piece. We're going to be writing down questions. We're going to take notes. We're going to try to circle back as soon as that part of the session is over. Michael or I, maybe John or Rick, will answer those as appropriate. If we don't know the answer, don't have the answer, we'll get it. We'll get it to you personally, directly. If you tell us how to reach you, we'll post it on the website project page or somewhere where you can find it. So we'll do our best to cover all those tonight and circle back on any that we don't get to tonight. I'll give you the signal when you're out or when you're approaching the end, and we'll just run through a total of 40 minutes, and we'll kind of proceed to finish up together. Oh, and sorry, to the extent you're comfortable, tell us who you are and where you live. You don't have to give us details, but whether you do or don't there, if you want us to reach you afterward, you got to tell us how.
My name's Greg Jacoby, and I live 2 doors down, 4916 La Vista Road, which y'all have mentioned tons of stuff from the drainage to the lighting to everything, but you're not taking into consideration.
Sorry, guys.
That's my house.
Turn that microphone up.
Hello. My name's Greg Jacoby. I live at 4916 La Vista, which is just 2 doors up. And everything you have just shown, from the drainage to the landscaping to the lighting, seriously affects my property. I have issues there now. And everything you're going to do is going to be detrimental to my property. Not to mention the noise. The back of my property is only less than 100 feet from that corner of that pickleball court. But y'all have never taken into consideration, you're thinking about the north side, but that's actually a residence right there. So I'm not going to waste a lot of your time right now, but every one of y'all should contact me, and it'd be nice to be included in this in some way, somehow, and address my issues, rather than doing every bit of this and not considering the people that it truly does affect. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bill Copeland. I live at 3872 North Lake Creek Drive, on your diagram is, I am here in support of my neighbors who this may affect. I don't believe it's going to directly affect my living conditions in my home. I only have one question. I hope you don't mind my closing to the group. How many of us in attendance here tonight, will definitely be using the pickleball? I thought everyone would want to know that. That's all I have.
Good evening. My name is Rebecca Gross. Can everybody hear me okay? I live on Morgan Road. My house is 300 feet from the pickleball courts. While I applaud the city of Tucker's decision to upgrade the facilities at the rec center, especially the parking, access to fire services, I have significant concerns about spending $3.25 million of taxpayer dollars on 12 pickleball courts. 12 pickleball courts at a cost of $3.25 million that would impact all of the residents, most of the residents on Morgan Road. In Appledale Estates, there were 4 courts installed. If Tucker decides to go ahead with the implementation of 12 courts, that's triple the impact of the noise concerns. I would ask that when the city council votes on this project, that they only ask themselves, would they vote yes if they were going to have 12 pickleball courts, 300 to 100 to 300 feet in their own homes? I don't think you would. I don't think any of us would want that. I also provided your several members of the council with copies of various news articles from around the country that show that it's had a severe impact on the value of residents' homes when a pickleball court is situated right close to a residential area. It simply does a very negative impact. And as I said, I've included the copies of those news articles in remarks that I've given to the council. So hopefully we will have an opportunity to look at that. Can you hear me now? Okay. So I guess in closing, I just want to stress the fact that if this goes through as proposed, I would have 12 pickleball courts 300 feet from my front yard. I'm not happy about that.
Let's come right up and get started, but you gotta get real close to the mic.
I'm Andrew Gladu. I live on Morgan Road as well. Just a few points. I don't feel the city of Tucker should spend $3.25 million on 12 pickleball courts that would benefit less than 3% of our population. It's too much money to spend on one sport. The courts would have limited other uses. The money would be better spent on more inclusive projects in the city. Secondly, the city of Tucker shouldn't spend $3.25 million on pickleball that will cost almost 5% of the 2025 budget for the city. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, the city of Tucker shouldn't spend $3.25 million on a pickleball complex that was conceived, designed, sent out for bids with no community involvement until tonight. None of the residents on Morgan Road or along La Vista Road were given any opportunity to influence the location or design of this complex. Given the flood of noise complaints across the country from pickleball courts placed near residential areas, it's reasonable to assume that noise will be a major issue. Many of us on Morgan Road work from home, so this is going to be a very big problem. The current proposal currently has no acoustic fencing in the plan, and it's already $3.25 million. Lastly, when this comes up for a vote in the city council, I would urge them to vote no on this current proposal and carefully reconsider if this is the best use of these funds. If it is decided that Tucker needs to be a pickleball destination, then the community must be notified and involved in the design and location decisions for any facility. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Suzanne DeCaro. I live on Bell Road. Good evening, Mayor, Council, City Manager, and staff. Thank you for the time and effort you put into our community, and also for postponing the vote to award the construction contract for the Tucker Rec Green Space and holding this listening session tonight. I've been asking questions since March. That said, I want to emphasize this listening session should not be confused as the community input session to fulfill the Roots Design Studios contract, as nothing said tonight will be taken into consideration for the design. As we see it here, it's been finalized. It's been published widely, and it's been used by Parks and Rec as the basis for an RFP process to secure construction bids. This $3.2 million rec center project has had no community input, no economic or feasibility study, no acoustics engineering study, and no basis whatsoever in 2 different master parks plans. Yet, will be 100% funded by City of Tucker residents using fiscal year 23, 24, and 26 budgets. It was born from a 12-page proposal titled Making Pickleball a Central and Essential Part of the Tucker Community, written by 12 residents and non-residents for Tucker Park and Rec. The actions that followed include a memo to council from Park and Rec requesting $77,000 for the design renderings and engineering plans that were also to have public input included and did not. Once finished, the design was never formally presented to council. The design was pushed through the RFP process by Park and Rec over the span of 2 years with no community involvement or formal presentation to council. Yet, here we are, sitting at the construction award stage. This plan followed none of the recommendations of the 2 master parks plans. You guys heard me, right? Yes. Okay. The top 5 findings of those plans, did you know what's in them? Concern, lack of park space, playgrounds, splash pads, multi-use walk and hiking trails. Those are in the top 5 priorities of the 2 master parks plans that this city has paid for and improved. Yet somehow, pickleball is listed as the only essential athletics program above all others. And in the executive summary of the update,
Good evening. Y'all hear me? Yes. Okay. Mr. Mayor, council members, appreciate y'all having this session today. I did not realize that it was not a formal requirement to hold public hearings like this before things like this happen. So that's alarming to hear, but I genuinely appreciate y'all opening up the mics for us. I moved to Morgan Road less than 2 years ago with my family, and I want to paint a little bit of a picture of the folks that live on that road in that community. I found when we moved in that the vast majority of our neighbors, over 80%, had lived in the area over 15 years. So when you're thinking about the folks of Morgan Road, it's not just faceless names on a diagram, but it's people who have been in the community before Tucker was an actual city. People that shop on Main Street, people that go to tavern on Friday evenings in the summer to watch movies, people that put their tax money and raise their families in Tucker and love this community and care about this community, and who are really alarmed, and you're seeing a lot of emotion from us tonight. Because I'd ask all of you who live in this room about your families, your parents, your kids, your brothers, your sisters, people you care about, if you heard that they were building 12 pickleball courts behind their homes, I would just ask all of you, in good conscience, would you support those pickleball courts being built behind your home or the home of your loved ones? Because I appreciate the hydrology study, the parking lot, the fire, all of this presentation was great, but to me it comes down to one question. Would you allow your families, would you vote for your families to have pickleball courts built so close? Thank you for your time.
It's going to be hard to follow that one, but I'll try. My name is Maurice. I live in the Summer Oak community, which is not on Morgan Road, but right next to it. So I definitely want to be here in support of my neighbors on Morgan Road, who I see pretty often. Because I walk my dog on that street every day. Now I'm walking a newborn every other day on that street as well. And I do have concerns about the noise and the potential traffic of people coming down Morgan Road to access. So I was, pretty encouraged to hear that there's going to be some things hopefully done about that, but the noise, the potential traffic, like those are my concerns, and not here to hate on pickleball at all. Never played it, seems fun, but 12 courts does seem excessive, and I'm curious about what was the thought process behind thinking that 12 was the number? Why could it not be 4, maybe 6? 12 just seems very excessive for an entire complex to be practically in people's backyards. So I just wanted to be here in support of my neighbors on Morgan Road, even though I don't live directly there.
My name is Becky Caldwell. I'm a lifelong resident of Tucker. I moved to Tucker in 1962, and people said, why do you want to move way out there? I'm also a physical education retired teacher, and I think that pickleball is an excellent way to get people to play. We have young people, we have old people playing, and most of them can beat me. But this is rec property. It's always been rec property. As a matter of fact, I went to elementary school here before it was a recreation center. It's rec property. We should develop it for this. This is a good thing for all of it. People downtown, when we get finished playing pickleball, we go downtown and eat lunch and talk with our friends. So it has an economic impact for all those people. Thank you.
I think it will negatively impact our neighborhood on Morgan Road and Tucker both. I think it will force some changes I'm not sure we all want. But what I really believe in is that there is a way to pull together the goodwill in the community to put this great idea in the North Lake Mall area, and it would be a win-win for both communities. That property there and this property here. That's what I'd like to see.
Hello, I'm Waverly Robinson. I live near, I forget, but anyway, I would just want to ask about the safety. If, say, would some, after they're done, would they feel safe to just walk to their car? Are they scared that somebody's going to get them or something? And also, I was wondering about about the safety. Also, when are you going to close up the parks? Is it going to be really late? Do people get to play all night long and all day long, or is it going to be in a secure place where, I went to one university and they closed up at maybe 9 or something. So they have closed up stuff. And then also, this has been a trend for a couple of years. So will this continue to be a trend, or will it just suddenly come to a halt? No one will play pickleball anymore. Because it just popped up out of the blue and everyone's okay, let's play pickleball. So now it's in 2 years, everyone would just look out pickleball and stop and play pickleball or something. We don't know. So yeah, those are all my thoughts. Thank you for your time.
My name is Anna Lisa. I live on Morgan Road as well, and I would like to thank you for giving such a thorough presentation about all the mitigation measures. My name is Anna. I live on Morgan Road, and I would like to thank you for this presentation outlining all of the mitigation measures that you've considered and are planning to implement. However, I would like to point out that mitigation measures are just that. They are mitigation measures. And as Andrew said, it is not unreasonable for us on Morgan Road to expect that there will be increased noise pollution, there will be light pollution, and there will be increased traffic in an area that is already having increased congestion. I would also like to say that I appreciate the mayor's apology and acknowledgement that this entire plan was designed and developed without input from the community that is most affected by the design. And I would like you to take the next step, that is taking into consideration our concerns, taking into consideration the concerns of the community most affected by this project. With a budget of $3.25 million, I do not understand why we cannot find a better location for this project, and the mayor himself listed multiple locations that have been repurposed or have had pickleball courts added to them. I do not understand why we need to put 12 courts into a residential area a few hundred feet from the back of multiple people's houses. Please take our concerns into consideration. Thank you.
Y'all are lucky, I just have 2 minutes. Everybody here is all right? All right, my name is Heather Hale, and I live, on that Morgan Road. I'm a resident, a homeowner, and a work-from-home business owner. As some of you all might remember, City Council, my partner and I have been here for almost 20 years, having chosen a home in a quiet, residential, walkable neighborhood that had a beautiful tree canopy. This was important as my mother, who had Alzheimer's, was moving in with us. We enjoyed hearing the kids gleefully, mostly, playing at the rec center and church, as well as the high school band practicing. These sounds warm my heart. We celebrate community activities, and as retired, exuberantly competitive athletes, we are both inspired by sports that can be played by spring chickens and fine wines, especially since we are closer to fine wines than spring chickens. In fact, thanks to constant encouragement from other retired athletes, we're recently discussing trying it out. I may see some of you all somewhere. Imagine my surprise to hear about this plan. On one hand, a multi-use complex that can be used for adaptive sports and intergenerational play. Sounds like a win-win for the community. And it is. I'm not against this complex. I might be against the location. Part of a winning project is location, and to be clear, I think it's suboptimal. Before I whisk into that, I wanted to say that I really appreciated the presentation and thoughtfulness from the design and engineering team. With the exception of the community engagement meeting, y'all seem to have given thorough consideration to the site, from impact to the community and the land. I think I'm gonna have to I'll read this paragraph real fast. The green space, transparency, and the green space that will disappear here at the rec center is the only place that kids and adults can put their feet in the grass, breathe air filtered by trees and other plants, and to frolic in something close to nature. These green beings gift us with oxygen and happily soak up increasingly notable water deposits from rains and storms. Trees and time in nature improves health and well-being. Okay. Questions. Who is this complex for? As in, do y'all anticipate it being used exclusively by Tucker residents or hosting tournaments for residents of other communities? Will the kids who attend the rec center have access to these facilities? What percentage of the time will the courts be for pickleball versus other programming? If the location is a done deal, might there be wiggle room for fewer courts and more real green space and space for kids to play, perhaps while their parents play? If the complex goes through as currently planned and residents on Morgan Road, especially those, this is it, especially adjacent, will you listen to adjust? Will you listen to us?
Hi everyone, my name is Darrell Bird II, and I do not live on Morgan Road, but not too far from here in Tucker, off Idlewood. I will say I do feel for you all who do live on Morgan Road, and I can only imagine what you're going through. I really don't know what to say, but being a God-fearing person, I pray for you all, and so on and so forth. Regardless. I am in favor of it, like Becky was saying earlier, and my only question for you all is, love bocce ball. Bocce ball is amazing. Also love sand volleyball, beach volleyball. That's a lot of fun. But what about a basketball court? There aren't a lot of outdoor basketball courts here in the city of Tucker, so I think we should at least consider that as an option in addition to the other options you all consider. Thank you all so much.
Can you hear me? Okay. My name's Troy Heller. I am also a resident of Morgan Road, where I live with my husband and my 4-year-old twins. We've lived there for about 5 years. I was raised in a city outside of Chicago that has a robust park district, park system. I love the idea of that existing here in Tucker. However, as a resident of Morgan Road, I am concerned about a lot of the things that you have started to mention mitigation for, but I'm not exactly sure about the practicality or what, if there's been real consideration as to what is potentially going to happen. That I have almost been hit on Morgan Road from people who are cutting through to get to the rec center or cutting from the rec center to get to Chamber Tucker Road more times than I can count at this point. It is not well lit. It is, people zip through there, and there is no traffic mitigation currently on Morgan Road in terms of speed bumps, anything like that. So I'm concerned about that. The other things that I would say is that I feel like there's a little bit cart before the horse. Within the rec system, or within the master plan, there's discussion of things like sports complexes, which would take into consideration more than just one sport playing population. Might include volleyball, might include many things, might include multi-sport spaces. And I think that taking the time and millions of dollars to install for one loud community is preempting better plans that could be implemented. So I would urge you to consider a more holistic look and avoid ignoring the concerns of the residents of that street.
Hey y'all, I've lived in Tucker for 26 years off of North Lake Creek Drive. So Greg, North Lake Creek Drive, I know there's people from my neighborhood that play pickleball. I've seen a few of you. We're not just talking about Morgan Road, we're talking about Pine Cove, we're talking about Summer Road, we're talking about North Lake Creek Drive, we're talking across Henderson, we're talking across La Vista. So Mayor, I appreciate that you said don't repeat stuff, and I'm trying not to, and I've been in touch with my council members. But when you talk about the noise, so we had glass recycling back off of Tucker Rec Center a few years ago. That stopped because of the noise. And so we're talking about green space, we're talking about quality of living, noise pollution, traffic pollution, safety. What else do I have listed? Ambulances. I hear that pickleball, which we all want you guys to engage in that and have fun. But I also heard from a former tennis player that doesn't play pickleball because she knows people that got injured. So imagine having ambulances, fire trucks, that type of stuff. So find a place that's suitable. I don't know if an area outside, because we've talked about North Lake Mall and other things, and I know this is a rec center. I remember when Jennifer Aniston was here filming Dumpling, and I sat in this theater before it was renovated, and it's so nice. I want to keep Tucker Rec Center Tucker. Tucker from the 50s, not Tucker where it's, you know, unrecognizable and it's paved over. I want a green space. I literally walked here tonight. Yes, there was a dark spot, but I had a light. But I feel safe around this area, and it's my community. So I really hope that, you know, there's a lot more discussion, and I appreciate that we have this opportunity right now. So thank you.
Hey guys, Jason Landers. I live on Morgan Road. And first off, I really appreciate all the effort that you guys have gone through to put this together, and that the council's been doing for the past couple of years. It's been bang up work. I do agree with a lot of what my neighbors are saying, and I don't want to regurgitate that and waste council's time. I also agree that we need to support our pickleball playing community. It's a good sport. It gets people active that otherwise might not. I really, two things. One, there was some talk about the existing vegetation as a noise buffer, and being on the left-hand side of that, it doesn't protect you from as much noise as you might think. So I would love to see if we could consider some additional mitigation measures on that fence line. More importantly, when we look through this, there's a lot of news coverage of a lot of different pickleball issues with nearby residential neighborhoods, right? With noise being a problem and all that. If we're going to do this, I would love to see us find a way that we show up on the news as the community that figured it out and did it well.
do not like talking. I am a teacher. I know we had a retired teacher who came up here and spoke. I am a current teacher. I actually worked in the sports camp this summer. And everybody's been very positive. And I actually got up to talk because I'm here, like, it's just very discouraging. I've lived here for 22 years. I'm single, so I was very proud to buy my own house. I work at the school up the road. And tonight, we're sitting here, the people who live on Morgan Road have nothing, and I don't know why we have to keep saying this, we don't have anything against pickleball. And yet I'm sitting here, and people are looking up our addresses to see how it affects us. And when we're talking, we're the only people clapping for each other. We're not asking for you all not to play pickleball. If you do any type of research, it shows that it's very noisy. And yes, they say even with 500, nobody has said no to pickleball. Nobody that's playing pickleball here has really clapped and even supported the people. We're Tucker. Why are we dividing ourselves? I just don't understand. To me, it would make sense to have something that's covered. You could play 24 hours a day, rain, something. So I'm like, I just don't understand. It's very disappointing because as a teacher, we're trying to teach empathy, kindness, and working together. And right now, this community, we're not working together. It's Morgan Road against the rest of the pickleball. And it's really the other thing that nothing was talked about there's no money in there for the mitigation, the trees. There's nothing that's talked about. He said that they had talked about it, about possibly, foam balls. I know you all don't like the foam balls because then you can't really play. So what's the compromise? Like, why are we all, nobody's, sorry. I think that's it. It's just really upsetting. I worked really hard for my house, for all of you. I work hard. I've done it all by myself. I didn't have anybody else. And so I'm just, why can't we figure out a solution together?
Hi, I'm Sheila Brewer. I live off Midvale. I'm not on Morgan Road. Just for the record, I have been clapping for all of you Morgan Roaders. Just want to let you know that. I am pro pickleball court. I just want to throw that out there. But I just want to say, we are one community, and I just feel like, can we not lose sight of that? I feel like this has been just such a very polarizing conversation. I feel like all of you that live in this vicinity that are going to be directly impacted have some really good points and some really good important concerns. And I think that it would be really smart of everybody that's involved in this decision-making process, like me, to meet with you guys and to talk through this. I feel like there can be some common ground that can be made. And I don't think it has to be an either or. I think that there can be some common ground where everybody can get what they want. I also think there is a huge obesity epidemic here. And when I have just recently started playing pickleball. I started playing at the end of July. And y'all, when I go and I have started playing because my nephew Trevin, we got custody of him 3 years ago and we just ended up adopting him. And he is a troubled boy and he has come from a lot of trauma in his life. Many of you that have been playing pickleball may know my nephew Trevin. He's a lovely kid, but he has come from such anxiety and trauma, and we have struggled to find something that has been a positive thing in his life. He has gone down some bad, dark roads, and pickleball, honestly, this sounds so ridiculous. It's been like the only positive thing in his life that has given him any sense of purpose. And I know that this sounds really trivial, but I really think that pickleball is going to save this kid's life. He has gone from hanging out with bad kids, getting into a lot of trouble with the law and other things, failing at Tucker High School, not having any sense of belonging, nothing. And as soon as he got introduced to pickleball, y'all, he rides his bike to Arrowhead or Arrow Creek? All the way down in Chamblee he rides his bike a ridiculous amount of distance just to go play pickleball. He has connected with people. He connects with people of all ages. He talks to people. this has been such a positive thing in his life, and I know my time is up, but I just feel like this is something where we as a community can get together instead of fighting, and I just thank you all for your time.
Because I feel ill at ease at speaking about this, but I just wanted to kind of reiterate a couple of things, which is that I'm Clementine, by the way, and I live over by the high school, and I'm not even on Chambly Tucker, and I can still hear Chambly Tucker, so all I can think about for these residents is that they will have pickleball on one side and Chambly on the other, and just basically two noise walls looking, between. That being said, I don't play pickleball, but I'm pro sports and I'm athletics and health. And what would I like to see instead? Well, maybe less pickleball courts for one, because Avondale had 4 and they were 100 feet away. But this is 12, it's 3 times as many. And I didn't hear you say that you had actually asked those residents how they feel about it and whether they are okay with it. I'm sure that, as the last person said, there are some ways to finesse things, but it's worth looking into for that finesse. The other thing is that we need more safety around biking and walking, and I know that y'all are already working on the walking part and the biking a little bit, but Chambly's still not safe to bike down, and it's barely safe to walk down the roads. Like when the person talked about Morgan Road not having lights, not having sidewalks, not having ways to keep the cars from going fast down the road. I mean, all of those are very relevant, and to a lot of the roads that are around here too. So just bringing that up. Thank you.
Hi there. I don't live on Morgan Road, and I actually do. I do play a lot of pickleball. I've played in various places around. And I will say that there are no public courts that I know of that have that many courts. And, we could probably do without, you probably could make do with maybe 4 to 6, and you'd still get a lot of usage. So, you talk about a multi-purpose facility. I don't see the sand volleyball on there. I don't know if they took that out, but I understand the complaints. It sounds like there hasn't been enough discussion about it. So I really do think you need to talk to some people more, and maybe this is something we can all agree on. You guys need to work on your presentation skills. That was way too long. That's just, you gotta cut that down. We were waiting an hour and a half before any of this could happen. We didn't meet every detailed line about every mitigation factor. You gotta really wrap that up a little bit. But find out what's important to people. And it sounds like the noise is really important. So go to the courts that exist and do a sound study. There are courts, Rosenfeld Park, that are close to houses. Find out what that noise really is. Because you've heard stories, you've read newspaper articles about the sound. How bad is it? And how far do you have to get before it's manageable for people?
977 feet.
Before it's completely made. But you're gonna hear noise somewhere, right? You got the street here, you got Chambly Tucker, you're gonna hear some things. But find out if you had 4 to 6 courts, how noisy would that be? How far away does it have to be before it's tolerable for people? So it just sounds like you kind of did rush things a little bit before getting the public input. I think we can reach a compromise here. I hope we can anyway. Because I would like to play pickleball outside here too. But I want to make people's lives miserable.
My name is Debbie May. I do not live anywhere near here, but I'm here to support these neighbors that do live right by it. I know how it feels to have something built so close to your home. And if you're not in a great big subdivision, you have no dog in that fight, so to speak. You're just you against a huge conglomerate. That's the city of Tucker is becoming. For the first time, I'm seeing this whole plan and noise. We've already talked about that, but $3.2 million on an outdoor court. I just did a little quick figuring. If people are playing 10 hours a day at $20 a pop, which I don't know what you're charging, it's gonna take us almost 5 years to even come near making up that money. So if you're gonna build something like this, and you have an empty field, why not do an indoor court, spend a little bit more money, do an indoor court where we could play on it daily and not have to worry about the sun shining, snowing, raining, or anything. But think this out a little bit better. You're talking about parking being an issue. Well, the 50 to 60 spots that are now mandated for this area, if the courts are full, that's right at 64 spots you're gonna need, because most people drive themselves. Most people do not share a ride these days. There's no walkability to the courts. There's no one living near here to walk to the courts. So realistically, and I know Michael does a wonderful job of planning, but with what he's been giving, this is a great spot for an indoor court possibly, where you could put more and people could play more. Another thing is, in April of 2023, there was a stakeholder meeting. Who's the stakeholder? I'm very curious about that, because I feel like I'm City of Tucker, I'm a stakeholder, and I never knew anything about this. So if you're gonna spend $3.2 million of my money with no coming back, that's where I'm at.
I only have one question. Can you add a permanent gaga ball pit? Because I like playing gaga ball, so that's all.
Hi, my name is Dr. Megan Meyer. I moved to Tucker 4 years ago. I spent 24 years in Decatur and moved to Tucker and have loved being a Tucker member. And I am not right on Morgan Road, but I'm in that neighborhood behind Morgan Road. So this potentially does impact me specifically, and I do work from home some, and so I think we've talked a lot about the noise issues. I guess one question I would have is there clearly hasn't been enough study about the noise. Courts more than 977 feet shouldn't pose much of a problem to residents, but that's a long way away, and a lot of houses are impacted by that, or way inside that 977 feet. I am super pro pickleball, super pro getting kids, middle-aged people, older people, getting everybody out. I want everybody off their computers. I want them more active. I want them to live long, healthy lives. So I am super supportive. But what I will say is that these are the people whose health is going to take a hit, because constant exposure, because if you're talking about 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. potentially, it's associated with increased cardiovascular disease, more increase in mortality, elevated blood pressure, diabetes, and adverse reproductive outcomes. And so I think we have to look at health on both sides of this. We have to look at it both from the health of the people who are going to be impacted by noise pollution and light pollution, and potentially water issues, which we really haven't talked about. You did a great job with this, but there are a lot of issues already pre-existing in this area about water. So that hasn't really been discussed, and so I believe that there are solutions that will make everybody happy. So thank you.
Thank you all. Before we reached our 40 minutes. Can I give you 30 seconds?
The mic?
Real fast, sorry.
Good evening. My name is Joe Rothwell. I live on Shanley Tucker Road. From my back porch, I can see the ballpark at Cofer. I can see the tall lights. I can hear them play baseball. And I got a whole road, houses. I've got about 2/3 of an acre. I can see all of that from my back porch. I've lived here for about 10 years, voted for the city, voted for you, Mr. Mayor. I work as a regional planner in government on comprehensive plans. I've known Mr. McHenry since he was a planner at Flowery Branch. So I know for the comprehensive plans, public engagement, public comment, meetings are not something we forget about. I will tell you that my son, I have a 10-year-old son. It's already past his bedtime, he's sitting over there. He keeps us busy playing sports. Tyson was shut down for a month recently because they reseeded the fields. We had no place to go. Tucker Rec baseball gets to be so busy, we had no fields to play on. We actually came over here last spring, we needed a place to go. Lacrosse, we played here. Now I know we have Fitzgerald Park opening up. That's 20 minutes away. I know we're developing a Grand Master Plan. You're telling people to go far away. And as much as I've heard about pickleball, I haven't heard about the youth having grass places to play. I'll end on this. A couple of years ago, he started playing baseball. Good luck playing a place to go hit a baseball. Hofer Park's locked up. We ended up going to the green space at one point when it was still a dirt lot. It is still a dirt lot, just to hit the balls. Driving all around trying to find open green spaces. Yes, there's floods at times. Does it require more than $3 million? No. Keep it open, keep it green, keep it places for just kids to run. Thank you.
I do agree about pickleball. I don't mind you all playing pickleball on 12 courts a lot. The money that we're spending is not necessary for that type of money out of our pocket. Now, let's ask the question. Let's take pickleball to the Hugh Howell area because you all have space in that area that you can put a pickleball. Instead of putting on this side of the road, let's take it to Hugh Howell Road because you have space there. And you haven't even considered the spaces there. And that's formal. Thank you.
Did you hear specific questions about the plan or anything you wanted to address? Nothing? But it's a great input. I think I can read my fellow council members' minds about some of the things that we're going to do and talk about as a result of all this. We appreciate you being here. We're going to hang around for a couple of minutes. Are we going to get this or some image on these other screens if people want to look at them?
I'm going to try to. I don't know if I can get it
All right. So we'll hang around to talk to you individually if you like for a few minutes afterwards. Otherwise, I think we're going to call it dismissed and wish you safe travels back home and see you soon.